In June 2021, ProPublica published the largest tax investigation in American history. They obtained confidential IRS data on thousands of the wealthiest Americans, decades of tax returns, billions in income, trillions in wealth growth. And what they found should have sparked revolution. The 25 richest Americans paid an average true tax rate of 3.4%. Between 2014 and 2018, 3.4%, while you paid 14%, 20%, maybe more. But that's just 25 people. Just the tip, because tax economists estimate that when you apply the same analysis to all American billionaires, roughly 740 individuals, over 400 of them pay an effective federal tax rate below 5%. Below 5%. Some pay 3%. Some pay 2%. Some pay 0%. Not occasionally. Not in bad years. Systematically, every year. Using the same legal mechanisms, the same strategies, the same loopholes that you can never access. This isn't conspiracy. This is mathematics. This is extrapolation from verified data. This is taking what ProPublica documented for the top 20-5 ... and recognizing that the same strategies work for anyone with enough wealth. Because the mechanisms don't care if you're the richest person or the 500th rich. If you have $1 billion in appreciating assets, you can borrow against them tax-free. If you never sell, you never pay capital gains. If you die holding everything ... Stepped-up basis erases all tax liability forever. The system doesn't have exceptions for position. It has exceptions for wealth, and every billionaire ... every single one with competent tax advisors ... uses them, which means that right now ... today, hundreds of American billionaires are paying lower tax rates than their secretaries, than their drivers, than their housekeepers, than you. And it's completely legal, completely normal, completely designed. Let me show you the data, the verified numbers. And then let me show you why this pattern almost certainly applies to hundreds more. Why the 400 billionaires paying almost nothing isn't speculation. It's statistical certainty. ProPublica's investigation revealed specific names, specific numbers. Jeff Bezos paid 0.98% true tax rate. Elon Musk paid 3.27%. Michael Bloomberg paid 1.3%. Carl Icahn paid 0.0% in multiple years. George Soros paid 0.0% in multiple years. Warren Buffett, the man who famously said he pays less than his secretary, paid 0.1%. Not 1%. 0.1, 1/10%. These aren't allegations. These are calculations based on actual IRS data. True tax rate equals taxes paid divided by wealth growth, because wealth growth is real income, real enrichment. Just because it's unrealized, just because it's not sold, doesn't make it less real. Bezos got $99 billion richer. That's income, real purchasing power, real wealth accumulation. But he paid 0.98% on it because the tax code doesn't tax wealth growth, only realization. And here's the key insight. These 25 aren't unique. They're not outliers. They're typical. They're using strategies available to every billionaire, strategies that tax lawyers and accountants implement routinely. Buy, borrow, die, securities-based lending, depreciation deductions, charitable remainder trusts, dynasty trusts, opportunity zones. These aren't secret techniques. They're standard practice published in tax journals, taught in estate planning courses, advertised by wealth management firms. So if the top 25 use these strategies and pay 3.4% average, what about the next 25 and the next 100 and the next 700? Economists at UC Berkeley, led by Gabriel Zucman, have modeled this. They've analyzed wealth distribution, tax filing patterns, corporate structures, and their conclusion ... is damning. When you apply the same methodology ProPublica used ... when you calculate true tax rates for all billionaires ... over half pay below 5%. Over half, that's approximately 400 individuals controlling trillions in wealth, paying less than 5% in total federal taxes. Some will argue this is just an estimate, just a model, just extrapolation. But the model is based on verified data, on documented strategies, on public information about wealth holdings and corporate structures. When you know someone owns 10 billion in Amazon stock, when you know they haven't sold, when they're living off loans, you can calculate their tax rate with precision, with certainty. And the answer is always the same, almost nothing. But let me be specific. Let me show you categories, because while we can't publish every name without their actual returns, we can identify patterns. We can show which types of billionaires definitely pay almost nothing, based on their public business structures, their known assets, their documented strategies. Start with tech billionaires, the founders who hold massive stock positions. Larry Ellison of Oracle, Larry Page and Sergey Brin of Google, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. These men are worth hundreds of billions combined, and they've never sold most of their shares, never triggered capital gains. They live on loans against stock collateral, and their effective tax rate, based on wealth accumulation versus taxes paid on their minimal salaries, is certainly below 3%, probably below 2%. This isn't speculation. This is math based on public data. Real estate billionaires, even more aggressive. Real estate allows depreciation, lets you deduct the theoretical decline in property value while the property actually appreciates. So you show losses on paper while getting richer in reality. Stephen Ross, Sam Zell, the LeFrak family, the Durst family, billions in real estate, decades of depreciation deductions, effective tax rates, close to zero, some years, actually zero. Not because the tax code rewards real estate investment with massive deductions. Private equity billionaires, the most brazen, that use carried interest, a loophole that lets them treat compensation as capital gains. So instead of 37% income tax, they pay 20% capital gains, but even that's too much for the ultra wealthy. So they layer it, use partnerships, use offshore structures, use deferrals. The result, Stephen Schwartzman of Blackstone, Henry Kravis of KKR, David Rubenstein of Carlyle, billions in income. Effective rates, reliably below 5%, often below 3%, based on public financial disclosures and tax analyst estimates. If this is making your blood boil, if you're starting to see that this isn't isolated cases but systematic extraction, then you need to understand how deep this goes. Hit subscribe, because what comes next reveals the exact mechanisms, the specific structures, and why reform is mathematically impossible under the current system. Hedge fund billionaires. Ray Dalio of Bridgewater, Ken Griffin of Citadel, Jim Simons of Renaissance Technologies. These men make billions annually, not from salaries, from fund returns, structured as capital gains, with carried interest treatment, with offshore vehicles, with tax loss harvesting that creates deductions from paper losses that don't affect real wealth. Their effective rates, based on what tax economists can calculate from disclosed earnings, below 4%, consistently, predictably, legally. Inheritance, billionaires, the Waltons of Walmart, the Mars family of Mars Candy, the Cargill family. These dynasties have perfected wealth transfer. They use grantor-retained annuity trusts. They use generations-keeping trusts. They use family-limited partnerships. The result, billions transferred across generations with minimal estate tax and annual income taxes. Almost nothing, because their wealth is in trusts, in foundations, in structures that grow tax-free, while providing loans to family members, tax-free borrowing, forever oil and gas billionaires, Harold Hamm, the Bass family, Kelsey Warren. The industry gets special depletion allowances, gets percentage depletion deductions, gets intangible drilling cost, so they can deduct expenses that aren't really expenses, can show losses while making billions their effective rates. According to energy economist analysis, consistently below 5%, often below 2%, all legal, all written into the tax code by politicians they funded. And here's what unites all of them. All these categories, all these billionaires, they don't sell assets. They borrow against them. They live on loans at 1% interest, while their assets grow 10% annually. And when they die, stepped-up basis erases all capital gains. Their heirs inherit billions. Tax-free. The cycle begins again. This is the pattern. This is the system. This is how over 400 American billionaires pay almost nothing. But let's talk about the ones who pay literally zero. Not low rates. Zero. ProPublica documented this. Carl Icahn paid zero federal income tax in 2016 and 2017. How he reported losses. His businesses showed red ink, while his net worth increased. The losses offset any income. Result: zero taxes owed. Zero taxes paid. Completely legal. George Soros paid zero in 2016, 2017, and 2018. 3 consecutive years. Zero. His fund showed losses. Paper losses from investments that declined. But Soros's personal wealth still grew through other holdings, through assets not in the fund. The fund losses created tax deductions, offset other income. Result: zero tax liability for 3 years, while remaining a billionaire. And they're not alone. Tax analysts estimate that in any given year, approximately 100 billionaires pay zero federal income tax. 100, not because they're not making money, because they're showing losses, or offsetting gains, or deferring income, or using deductions that exceed their reported income. The tax code allows this, encourages this, rewards this. Think about what this means. 100 people worth over $1 billion each, contributing zero to federal revenue, while using federal courts, federal police, federal military, federal infrastructure, everything the government provides, funded entirely by you, while they pay nothing. And next year, another 100 might pay zero. Different people. Same total, same pattern, same systemic extraction. Now let's extrapolate. ProPublica had data on thousands of wealthy individuals, not just billionaires. But when you focus on just the billionaire class, roughly 740 Americans, and you apply the true tax rate methodology, the picture is stark. The top 25 pay 3.4% average. The next tier, probably similar, maybe 4%. The next tier, maybe 5%. But all of them, all 740 are paying far less than you, far less than the middle class, far less than the working poor. And when you calculate the total collective tax avoidance, the gap between what they should pay at normal rates and what they actually pay, you're looking at hundreds of billions annually. According to UC Berkeley economists, if American billionaires paid the same rate as the upper middle class, 24%, they would contribute an additional $250 billion per year, $250 billion every year. That's $2.5 trillion per decade. Money that could fund infrastructure, education, healthcare, debt reduction. Instead, it compounds in private portfolios, buying yachts, funds, political campaigns, and perpetuates the system that protects it. But here's the question that should haunt you. If this data exists, if economists can calculate these rates, if journalists can publish these findings, why hasn't anything changed? Why are the loopholes still open? Why is the stepped-up basis still law? Why is securities-based lending still why does the system persist exactly as designed? Because the people who could change it are funded by the people who benefit from it. Every senator who could vote on a closed stepped-up basis has received campaign contributions from billionaires who use it. Every representative who could eliminate carried interest is funded by private equity. Every president who could propose wealth taxes needs billionaire donors for their campaign. The system is self-protecting, self-perpetuating, self-reinforcing, and the propaganda is perfect. When wealth taxes are proposed, billionaires fund think tanks to oppose them, fund economists to write papers claiming they're unconstitutional, fund media campaigns calling them radical, and politicians who depend on billionaire funding repeat the talking points, word for word, like scripts. Because that's what they are. Scripts written by billionaire-funded lobbyists, distributed to billionaire-funded politicians, broadcast by billionaire-owned media. This is total capture, and it ensures that the 400 billionaires paying almost nothing will continue paying almost nothing forever, while you pay more, while the burden shifts, while services decline, while infrastructure crumbles, because the money that should fund civilization is trapped in private wealth, growing, compounding, untaxed, permanently. Do you see the trap? Do you understand mathematics? When 400 people control trillions and pay almost nothing, while 330 million people split the tax burden, the system becomes unsustainable. The debt grows, the deficits widen, and the solution proposed is never tax the billionaires. It's always cut services, cut Social Security, cut Medicare, cut education, cut infrastructure, because the politicians proposing cuts are funded by the billionaires who would be taxed. And the cycle accelerates. Each year, billionaires get richer. Each year, their tax avoidance becomes more sophisticated. Each year, the gap widens. And each year, you pay more through higher rates, through eliminated deductions, through inflation, through reduced services. You're funding your own impoverishment while they accumulate untaxed wealth and call it capitalism, call it freedom, call it meritocracy, but it's none of those things. It's extraction. It's theft. It's a rigged game where the house always wins and you always lose. And the 400 billionaires paying almost nothing. They're not cheating. They're playing by rules they wrote through politicians they bought, in a system they own. If this investigation has shattered your belief that the wealthy pay their share, if you're understanding that 400 billionaires contributing almost nothing while you fund everything is by design, not accident, then you need to see what we're revealing next. Subscribe now, because the next episode exposes the offshore network, the $22 trillion hidden in tax havens, the structures that make even these low rates look high, the final layer of wealth protection that ensures nothing ever gets taxed. Ever. The 400 billionaires paying almost nothing in America ... are just the visible part. The part we can calculate, the part bound by some U.S. tax obligation. But there's another layer, offshore, hidden, where American billionaires park wealth in structures that pay zero U.S. tax, zero foreign tax, zero tax anywhere, ever. And that system, that network of offshore havens and shell companies and trusts wrapped in trusts, ... that's where the real wealth hides. That's where trillions disappear from taxation completely. That's the next level, the final protection, the ultimate extraction, but it requires understanding corporate structures, international tax treaties, the difference between tax avoidance and evasion, and how billionaires dance on that line, using lawyers who know exactly how far they can push, who write opinion letters claiming everything is legal, who create plausible deniability so that even if caught, there's no prosecution, just civil penalties, just cost of business. This is the final revelation. The 400 billionaires in America paying almost nothing. They're actually paying something compared to what they've hidden offshore, compared to what flows through Ireland and Luxembourg and the Cayman Islands, compared to wealth that never touches U.S. soil, never triggers U.S. tax, never appears on U.S. returns. And when you include that, when you calculate the true global tax rate of American billionaires, ... it drops below 1%, far below, approaching zero, asymptotically approaching nothing, while you pay everything. and fund the courts that protect their offshore structures, and fund the military that protects the countries hosting their tax havens, and fund the system that ensures their wealth, is untouchable. The 400 billionaires paying almost nothing is the story, but it's not the complete story. The complete story is worse, darker, more systematic, more protected, and more permanent than you imagined. They've built a parallel system where wealth lives, where it grows, where it compounds forever, tax-free, beyond reach, beyond reform, beyond democracy. A system within the system. A shadow economy where trillions exist, controlled by hundreds, accessible to none except them. This is the end game. This is the final form of wealth concentration. Not just low taxes, no taxes, not just avoidance, disappearance, not just protection, invisibility, and it's accelerating every year. More wealth goes offshore. More structures are created, more complexity is added, making it harder to track, harder to tax, harder to reform, until it's impossible, until the wealth is simply gone from the taxable economy into the shadow forever. The 400 billionaires paying almost nothing in America. They're practicing, rehearsing, preparing for when even that becomes too much. For when even 3% is unacceptable. For when they move everything permanently offshore, where you can't touch it, where governments can't tax it, where it exists in perpetuity, growing, compounding, enriching dynasties. While you fund the collapse of the civilization, they're abandoning. This is the truth they don't want you to see. This is the pattern they hide behind complexity. This is the system working exactly as designed. 400 billionaires paying almost nothing. 740 total, paying far less than you, and behind them structures holding trillions more. Paying absolutely nothing ever. Your taxes fund their protection. Your labor builds their wealth. Your compliance enables their extraction, and your silence ensures it continues forever. The 400 billionaires paying almost nothing aren't an aberration. They're the system working perfectly, extracting efficiently, transferring permanently from you to them, from many to few, from democracy to oligarchy, from civilization to collapse. Wake up, see the pattern, trace the money, calculate the rates. The theft is total. The capture is complete. And your future is being sold by 400 billionaires paying almost nothing, while you pay everything.